Today I'm going to explain an American supernatural horror film called The Conjuring, which released in 2013. Spoilers ahead! Watch out and stay safe. The movie is set in 1971 and follows the Perron family as they move into an old, rundown farmhouse in Harrisville, Rhode Island. Roger and Carolyn have 5 daughters, Andrea, Nancy, Christine, Cindy, and April, as well as a dog who they've named Sadie. Right at the start, we see that something is off when Sadie refuses to enter the house. Outside, April finds an old music box under a tree, while inside, the rest of the girls are playing hide and clap. One of them accidentally knocks off a pine wood board attached under the stairs, and they realize that there's a secret board behind there. Roger goes inside and discovers a cellar full of antique items, including a piano. This movie is not kidding around with the scary stuff, which starts off right away. Sadie barks like crazy all night and is found dead outside the house by April the next morning. Carolyn wakes up to find her legs covered in bruises, and all the clocks in the house paused at 3:07 a.m. The next scene shows Ed Warren showing a reporter around his occult museum of possessed and witchcraft items. They end at the doll Annabelle, which, as Ed explains, contains a demonic power. We cut back to the Perron farmhouse where all the clocks stop at 3:07 a.m. again, and strange things start happening. Someone pulls Christine's foot in her sleep. Cindy sleepwalks into Andrea's room and starts hitting her head on the wardrobe. The next morning, Carolyn sees more bruises on her body while Roger sees a dead pigeon fall off of a tree right in front of him. We then see April talking to an invisible person in her room. Later, as April and Carolyn play hide and clap, the wardrobe doors in Andrea's room automatically open, and 2 hands come out to clap. But just then, April comes to call Carolyn. Carolyn is surprised and checks the wardrobe but decides that she must have misheard it. That night, Christine's foot is pulled more forcefully than before, and she hears someone standing behind the room's door and whispering that her whole family will be murdered. Nancy wakes up and goes to check behind the door but finds nobody. The next morning, Christine is hysterical as she tells her parents what happened. Things start to get really scary that night as Carolyn hears the sound of children playing, but all her daughters are sleeping. Out on the stairs, all the family photo frames suddenly fall and shatter, and the laughter of an unknown girl leads her to the cellar, whose door is open. She goes in to investigate but is trapped there when the doors suddenly close by themselves. The bulb blows out, and when she lights a match to see what's going on, 2 ghostly hands emerge from the darkness and clap. The basement door rattles violently as Carolyn screams and tries to get out. In Andrea's room, Cindy is sleepwalking again, and Andrea wakes up to gently lead her to bed, when the wardrobe doors slowly creak open. When Andrea goes closer, she is suddenly attacked by a demonic woman crouching on top of the wardrobe, who wasn't there a second ago. Just then, Roger returns home from work to the sound of screaming coming from the house. Running in, he first frees Carolyn, and then they go to Andrea's room. Here we see that the demonic woman has disappeared and that Andrea seems to have been fighting empty air. The next day, Carolyn goes to attend a lecture and Supernaturalism by Ed Warren and afterwards invites the Warrens to her house as her family needs their help. After coming to the house and listening to the whole story, Warren records Carolyn's account of what happened, while Lorraine, a clairvoyant, goes to the basement and figures out that this is the origin of the dark activity going on in the house. She looks into the mirror of the music box which April found and sees a small boy in the mirror. When the Warrens go out to investigate, Lorraine sees a corpse hanging from the tree, the same demonic woman who had attacked Andrea. Lorraine tells Carolyn and Roger that she has seen a dark shadow lurking behind them, which carries a hate-filled heart, and it is so deeply attached to the family that even if they leave, the demon will follow them. They want to perform an exorcism, but for that they need the permission of the church, and they will need to present all the evidence of the house being haunted. That night, when Ed plays the recording of his interview with the Perrons, he can only hear his voice but not Roger and Carolyn's. This is when Lorraine shows him her research about the history of the house. The house was built by Sherman, who married Bathsheba, a witch who practiced black magic and worshipped the devil. She sacrificed her 7-day-old baby to the devil, but when her husband witnessed her doing this, she hung herself from a tree outside the house at 3:07 a.m. after cursing anyone who would ever live on that land. She also tells them about a string of deaths that have happened in that house on various occasions after Bathsheba killed herself. Suddenly, the tape recorder switches on and they hear the voices of Ed as well as a strange, threatening voice in the background. Next, the Warrens go to the farmhouse to collect evidence to present to the church. They are helped by their assistant, Drew, and a police officer, Brad, in setting up cameras and voice recorders to capture any unnatural activity. Ed also sprinkles holy water around the house and places crosses and other religious items around the house to rile up any evil spirits lurking there. The basement doors open up and Ed and Lorraine go down there. The doors suddenly close behind them. Apart from this, the team does not notice any other supernatural activity, and in the morning they sit down to a happy breakfast. Ed tells Carolyn to get some rest, and that he and Lorraine will handle everything. This is when things really start going wrong. Lorraine sees Bathsheba in Carolyn's window, but before she can run to help Carolyn, Bathsheba possesses Carolyn. Demonic activity starts all over the house. Brad sees the spirit of the maid who committed suicide, and she attacks him. Nancy sleepwalks into Andrea's room, setting off the cameras positioned everywhere, and locks the door. Ed and Roger run into the room to get her, having heard a child's voice inside telling Nancy to hide. After a lot of searching, they find Nancy hidden in a space between two walls. April tells Lorraine that that is where Rory hides when he's afraid, Rory being a young boy who died in the house. Lorraine goes inside the space to investigate and finds Rory's toys as well as the rope with which Bathsheba hung herself. Suddenly, the floorboards break and she falls into an underground space. Here, she sees the ghost of Rory's mother, who tells Lorraine that the spirit made her do it. Lorraine is attacked by Bathsheba but manages to get out, leaving behind a locket which holds emotional significance for her, as she and her daughter Judy have identical lockets. Rushing out, she tells everyone that the spirit of Bathsheba possesses mothers and makes them kill their children, and that it is now possessing Carolyn. Roger and Carolyn decide to leave the house with their children. As they're leaving, Lorraine sees Judy's dead body in the pool, which terrifies her, and she tells Ed that this is a warning for them. Unfortunately, their application for exorcism from the church is rejected as the Perron family is non-Catholics. At the Warrens' house, we see Bathsheba reach out to harm Judy through the locket that she took from Lorraine. Judy's leg is pulled in her sleep, and when she goes to look for her parents, she sees Bathsheba in a rocking chair, rocking to and fro with Annabelle in her lap. Bathsheba attacks Judy, but Ed and Lorraine get home just in time to save her. Meanwhile, Roger calls Ed for help because Carolyn is left with Christine and April. Lorraine says that she must have gone back to the house. They rush back to the farmhouse and get there just in time to save Christine from being murdered by a possessed Carolyn. They try to drag Carolyn out, but it is obvious that the ghost will kill Carolyn if she leaves the house. Suddenly, Carolyn is dragged to the cellar, and when the men try to overcome her, she fights back with supernatural strength. Finally, Roger and Ed tie her to a chair while Brad looks for April, who is hidden somewhere in the house. Due to the extreme circumstances, Ed decides to perform the exorcism himself then and there. During the exorcism, Bathsheba takes over Carolyn more strongly than ever, making the chair float up and break, releasing Carolyn so that she attacks Ed. In spite of the violent attack, he continues the exorcism. Just then, Thomas calls out that he has found April hiding in a crawlspace under the house. Under Bathsheba's influence, Carolyn crawls into April's hiding place and tries to kill her, but Ed follows her in and finally speaks the last words of the exorcism, thus halting her. Now Lorraine reaches down through the floorboards to place her hand on Carolyn's head and reminds her of all the happy times she had with her family, thus giving her the strength to fight off Bathsheba's spirit. The spirit leaves Carolyn and she hugs her daughter while she is crying. They leave the house with Roger helping an exhausted Carolyn to limp out. In the end, we see that the Perron family are happily celebrating their safety with a picnic with their saviors. And here, April returns Lorraine's locket to her. The movie ends with Ed placing the music box from the farmhouse in his museum of haunted items. So what did you think of The Conjuring? Are you gonna sleep with one eye open knowing that these are based on true events? No, in the comments. For more horror film recaps, be sure to subscribe, watch our other videos,